Please welcome to the stage the founder of Vatom Inc., Eric Pulier.
We're dissolving the boundaries between the physical and digital worlds, not taking us away from this world, the world we live in that we were evolved to be in, but to enhance it. To feel it, it has to be real. So that's what Vatom's done.
You say traditional engagement is dead.
You now have an opportunity to reach people in a way that's more aligned with your own values as an organization. It's advertising, marketing, and loyalty collapsed into one.
What you want to get to is this zero-party situation where the customer is so happy to tell you what they want.
It's not just about giving customers what they want, it's meeting them where they are and where they want to be and enhancing their lives.
I'd love to talk about the Frito-Lay example. You found a way to engage these customers in an incredible way to get zero-party data and to do it for a fraction of the cost.
So what it said was, take your favorite team and take a selfie. That selfie then gets minted on a golden hexagon. Now you're part of this communal art project, perhaps one of the largest, if not the largest communal art project ever done on the planet, and gets dropped and minted on a blockchain for history. It's so much cooler. That's 1% of this. A virtual object that has the qualities of a real world object, but not the constraints. You can now make these objects conduits for communication. That's the essence of why this is so powerful. I'm looking to say, wow, that's incredible. These people really are connecting to each other as humans. Not humans to information about humans like Instagram. It's not a FOMO fest. Let's capture the essence of that and enhance it.
I guess at the end of the day, you just zoom out and you think, how can this create better human interactions, right? Yeah. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
That's what people need to understand. It's to enhance reality.
Our opportunity is not to build the best set of use cases. It's to build the best platform that other people can build the use cases.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Eric Pulier, the entrepreneur, technologist, author, and public speaker. You are the founder of Vatom, an innovative Web3 SaaS engagement platform that enables companies to connect better to their customers, employees, and stakeholders while streamlining processes and improving profitability. Vatom has become the Web3 infrastructure and engagement platform of choice for some of the largest companies in the world, including Google, PepsiCo, Deloitte, Verizon, iHeartMedia, State Farm, WPP, and soon, London Real. You personally have founded 16 companies and raised over $1 billion in capital with a variety of exits via mergers, acquisitions, IPOs, and ICOs. You ultimately believe that traditional engagement is dead, traditional work is dead, and that Web3 platforms like Vatom will enable both companies and individuals to more positively engage with one another with more personalized experiences. Eric, welcome to London Real.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. I just want to start by saying that Vatom is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures. We are the world's first media-powered investment firm. Our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and academies. We strive to heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. Eric, super excited to be part of your journey with Vatom. And look, I still remember that Zoom call with you and your team a few months ago. And when you started dropping the demos of your products that you created for Google and PepsiCo and Starbucks, and don't worry, we're going to show a few of those later. Like, everybody's on the call, our collective jaws just dropped. Like, we were just massively impressed with what you built. And look, I've been deep here in Web3 for the past 2 years, and I've spent time speaking with some of the biggest names in blockchain and the biggest names in metaverse, including, people like Sebastian from the Sandbox and Yatsu of Animoca Brands. But I had never seen anything like what you guys had created. I think you built what everybody has been wanting and what everyone's been waiting for. And I've actually now started playing myself with it to build London Real's Web3 experience. Yeah, and I'm even more impressed with everything you can do in there. So that's a pretty intense start. But for people that don't know, how do you explain, what is Vatom? How do you explain that to them?
Well, Vatom, first of all, what it stands for is the word virtual atom, together meaning Vatom. And that's important. It doesn't just roll off the tongue, it actually has meaning behind it, which is the idea that we're dissolving the boundaries between the physical and digital worlds and not taking us away from this world, the world we live in that we were evolved to be in, but to enhance it, to extend our opportunity in this world to connect better with each other. And so what Vatom does is it allows us to connect better with each other. Brands to their audiences, sports teams to their fans, and us to one another. So that's why we call it an engagement platform. That's the best way to describe Vatom. It's an engagement platform that anyone can use. Yes, it's enterprise class. I think it might be the only really enterprise class, meaning secure, scalable, ready to integrate with existing Web 2 systems or Web 1 or pre-web, making it part of the communications infrastructure. But it extends that out for a new way of communication.
Wow. And I remember when you broke it down, you said, look, there's a lot of platforms out there in the Web3 space that do one thing. They do wallets, or maybe they have a metaverse, or maybe they have an NFT, or maybe they have an NFT marketplace. Yeah. But I still remember the slide where you're like, there's kind of 7 pillars, and you wanted to build something that had them all, because this piecemeal way, I think you always saw that was never going to work to really provide the experience that you want to provide to users.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not that hard to understand why. I mean, imagine you went to an auto dealership and you wanted a car. And they said, here's the most unbelievable steering wheel. And some people actually do this, and they're quite good at it. Here's a wheel. Here's a carburetor. And I actually know people who have the ability to stitch these things together and make an unbelievable car. But maybe 2 people. Most people want something that works together seamlessly and can get you where you need to go and has been tested for that purpose. That's the same thing that's needed here. It's fine to have a marketplace, but does it work with your wallet? It's fine to have a wallet. Can everyone use it? It's fine to have a wallet that everyone can use, but does it seamlessly integrate with a virtual space and with augmented reality? And does that work back with a back-end analytic platform? By the time you're done, you have a car. That's what's needed to make this go mainstream.
We all heard about this metaverse. Like my mom, she's in San Diego and she's in her 70s, and I try to explain to her what the metaverse is, and she's like, "What is it? Do I have to wear the goggles?" Right. And I think the public, I don't know if they even understand what a metaverse is.
Right.
How do you explain it to them? Is it about putting goggles on and hanging out, with Zuckerberg in a virtual room, or is the definition has it been miscommunicated to the public?
I think it has. For a couple of reasons. One is the breathless hype always leads to kind of this trap of disillusionment. But the other reason is, what do we really want, right? If we're going to get all excited about something, let's put a vision out there that if it were to come true, we'd be happy about it. No, we don't want to go into some far off place and be stuck in a video game playing ping pong with Mark. What we want is to extend our experience to talk to each other better. It's really interesting. If we had a phone here, I'd call up your mom and say, look, let's talk about this, because if you already understand a telephone, when a telephone came out, people were freaked out. You're never going to see your mom again. Why would you go see your mom if you could call her on the phone? It was going to destroy society. Truth is, telephone actually was really useful. It helped us connect with each other better, and I think there's a lot of negatives that have come of the evolution of the telephone to become a smartphone that actually gives us information about people instead of connecting us better, creates disillusionment, creates loneliness and disconnection. But the telephone itself, the idea of a communication over long distances is strong, right? As things have evolved to the web, when you think about the immense power that's brought to our lives, of course, any tool can be used for negative. so many positive things have happened in healthcare, education, government about the web. But it was really about information, right? And then you go better information, and then you can create self-generated information, user-generated content. But still about information. Really didn't bring us it wasn't the next step of communication the way the telephone was, right? The metaverse is. The metaverse brings the fancy telephone, the idea, to the web itself. So imagine a website. If your mom was here, I'd say, imagine a website you can visit your son at. It's that simple, right? A website that you can go to, a website that you can connect other humans in, not just on where information comes out, but in an immersive environment where we've learned to take social cues from each other and from the environment to create memories, experiences. That's going to change education. What is education? It's something that you want to get deeper into that you can remember later and then apply, right? What is communication? It's a way to take all the different social cues and actually impart information from one another to create relationships. This is a very powerful tool that will now advance that. But on the simplest level, it's a better website.
Right. And it's a way to interact in a social way that we love to do in person in a world that we've just now assumed is Web 2. And it's something we don't get to hang out with our friends on. No. So even imagining it is probably hard for someone like my mom or people that have been.
It's hard to imagine, but once you see it for 1 to 2 seconds, it's hard to unsee it.
Right.
So it's not hard to imagine anymore once you go to a website and instead of looking at information, you hear someone out of your left ear. Oh, so you look over there. Oh, there's somebody I can talk to, and then you move over there. You're not trapped in a box like Zoom, where you get Zoom fatigue and a kind of fight or flight reason to get anxiety in your body and you're stuck. Imagine Zoom with agency. Imagine a website with people, places, and things, the same primitives that allow us to understand this world as being real. Some of us still subscribe to the belief that this is the real world. I happen to be one of them. I'm trying to stay in it the best we can. But to be present in this world and to connect to other people, we can now translate some of those elements into the virtual space and more fully integrate our digital and physical lives.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily have to include a VR component to it.
No.
Which a lot of people don't understand that, right?
That's a very important thing to understand. It would be nice to fast forward X years to get devices that are incredibly lightweight, that are not feeling like they're going to separate us from other people in the room, that we can wear for long periods of time, that have infinite battery life. Like, that's a future that will come, but even when it comes, I don't think it's going to be as powerful as not having something on your head, as having this, God-given form that can then interact with digital information and connect to each other. So when you have a persistent virtual space where you can communicate in, the best way that we've come to the conclusion to bring it to the world is to create this analogy of the real world, persistent, always on. If you put something down there, when next time you come, it'll still be there. The cues that make you understand and believe that it's as real as anything else. Blockchain being another interesting aspect of the psychology, not only of ownership, but of independent permanence, right? So the idea that something will stay even if a certain company or game, et cetera, dies, gives you that notion, that feeling that it's real. Mm-hmm. So now imagine a virtual space that exists independent of us. Now imagine that you want to go into it to connect to somebody. It doesn't matter if you choose to wear goggles. That's okay. Nothing against you for that. I mean, I think there's actually immense benefit for some of that immersion for certain use cases. But what if you're in the car and you just want to tap in and talk to somebody? Well, you should be able to say, go in, goes to somebody there. Now, maybe within this environment, my avatar shows up because we're in a different device and we see you that way. But if I'm in the car, I just want audio. And if I want to text, I can maybe just text. And if I want to come in on a laptop, I'll come in on a laptop. So device independence is the key to the evolution of virtual spaces to become as real as physical ones.
And I think the big thing that I learned about the metaverse is all of us are in metaverses. A WhatsApp group is a metaverse. A Zoom call is a metaverse.
Exactly.
Whenever we're digitally connecting with each other, maybe a phone call was the original low-tech version of it, like you said. And so when people get that realization, you're like, okay, but it feels very simple in 2D. And you're like, well, what about if that was just better?
Yeah. What if it was better from the perspective of enhancing our humanity instead of pulling us apart, instead of disconnecting us? Right. What if we could take the next generation of technology and instead of keep rolling down the path where it's destroying the very essence of what we are, people who want to connect, and at least starts to turn back towards what will give us purpose, allow us to build better relationships, give us the tools necessary to live better lives. I think we have that opportunity now. Well,
let's talk about the elephant in the room. What went wrong with Web 2? You know, there's a lot of things that Web 2 did. You're already talking about how it disassociates us, probably because it's optimizing for revenue models to make a few companies massive. You know, there's obviously there's a lot of times zero direct information relationships. Then there's all these other issues that kind of come up. Digital colonialism, you know, Yatsu is always talking about that, about we gave away our data and they sold it back to us. Yeah. I've had my own struggles with censorship and not being able to communicate with people that really want to hear what I have to say. Sure. But since we have to go to this Web 2 platform, nobody's happy.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you can just talk about what did Web 2 do right and how do you explain to people why it's time for Web 3? Because I think a lot of the brands you are doing business with maybe initially don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important when we look at our evolution to Web 3, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, let's identify the things that went wrong. And I'll say a few things about that. But let's first celebrate the things that went right. Let's step back and marvel for a minute at the shoulders of the giants we now stand on and thank them for the work that now allows us to advance things. Like one of my favorite people, Peter Diamandis, who's on our board, an investor of ours and my very good friend, is probably one of the more optimistic leaders in the world in terms of how you can look at technology as a tool for the benefit of humanity, for where we're going. And I'm reminded in this conversation that we should first say, what an extraordinary thing that we've created this low-cost, ubiquitous network that at some point everybody could very well have access to, and it's moving in that direction, that will affect how we educate people and how healthcare is done, and longevity on the back of it is growing like mad. And there's a lot of negative news, but if you actually look at the stats, a lot of these technologies have come together to create much more positive than negative, right? That said, it's time to evolve to something better, as always, right? Always you want to look at what's next and adjust. So one of the issues that we found with this evolution of the internet and finding that concentration of power in certain areas is that it can very well restrict the most important thing, I believe, is just free speech, right? The promise of the internet is that everyone's connected and can realize their potential as a creative being. But if you concentrate the power, then the expression gets halted there, right? And that's one of the issues. And we can talk a little bit about how Web 3 has the promise to address that, free speech being one. The other one that I think is really important is when you think about how people make money, earn a living on the internet, also gets concentrated a certain way, the gatekeepers, etc. The next thing is your personal data. Who owns it? Who gets to use it? How do they get to use it? How was that used in the past, once people recognized how important that could be? To what end, right? So there was some very negative things that came out of that once people recognized it. I remember back in the early stages of social media, your listeners who have been around the bend a few times will remember Friendster, pre-MySpace, one of the first social networks, right? And I remember some of the brilliant people that were really looking at this and understanding the potential of that. And some of the brainstorming that went on back then of like, wow, if you could really start to glean the likes of people from how they're expressing themselves with one another, you could, and then says, you could what? You could make their lives better? No, even then it was like, you could give better information to advertisers, right? You could sell it. So right at the beginning it was always like, but it was very hard to know how to do that. Then the innovative guys at MySpace, Chris Wolf and Abra Whitcomb, they dove in and they made it available at a mass scale for people to start to express themselves. But it got pretty messy, expressing yourselves all over the time. And they weren't really data mining so much as really around the creative side of expression. Then Mark Zuckerberg came along. Absolutely brilliant. Give him credit, organized it in a different way, understood the power of virality and the social network, and really created, I think, an industry, but it ran amok. There were no guidelines, at least none that were followed for purposes other than profit. And so now you can start to see the realization of that vision and the pros and cons of that. A lot of pros, by the way. Again, a lot of people who leverage these tools for positive purposes and still do. That said, now we step back. Okay, so what happens if we can move to a different model where it's more decentralized, where there's more power put on the edges meaning the humans using the devices, as opposed to the central authorities, with still, you don't want a full decentralization. I'm not one of these people who is, again, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We actually still want guidelines. We want communities who are able to manage centrally their norms. You don't want to have to take in neo-Nazis and people who have, horrific beliefs into your community. Let them do what they want to do in theirs. So being able to control things centrally still matters, but not as the essence of the network itself, right? You have to be able to choose how you want. So let's start at the very basic to answer your question of like, what's different now? What's the opportunity? The basic, most important underlying piece of the next generation puzzle is identity. And that's where we started. A lot of people look at our journey and look at how we started the first use of digital objects on blockchain, the first NFTs for engagement. And it looks like from there, we then started to build on that premise. But actually, we started around a different notion, which is, what if we could all own our own data? What if we could all be ourselves? Again, if we go back to our earlier statement where this world is made up of people, places, and things, as you go to the internet, there's none of that. You're not a person. You're a account register, individual in that particular company's database. And then you go to another one and now you're that, and now you're that. You're not you showing up, right? So there's no people there. There's no places as opposed to, hey, let's go meet at cars.com. And there's no things, there's no true ownership. So as you go to people, places, and things, you start to add that as a way to now advance the next generation of the internet. Let's start with people. Well, I want to be a person when I show up. And when I go to the next, I want to still be me. And what I took from there, I want to have. That's me, it's my inventory, and it's my persona that I want to express. The way that I express myself is my choice. So you're allowed to have my birthday. And my dentist might be allowed to have certain aspects of my medical records so that I don't have contraindications. They didn't kill me with laughing gas. And this guy may be able to have something else. But that's my choice, right? And so when I start this journey and I look at where we go, I really believe that that's the underpinning of people owning their own identity, their own data. So what does that look like in Web3? It looks like what's kind of become known as the Web3 wallet. That is the base layer. A lot of us, and I'm one of them, believe that everyone will have one. You'll have today, maybe people have 75 apps and they use 4. It's very hard to find what you want if you want different types of things, and you end up trying something new and maybe incorporating it, but you don't have one place to keep the essential elements that are you, that you go from place to place. So I think that's the first piece. What that does is it allows you to show up in a certain way, ultimately not only monetize your data, but get paid yourself, right? For not only for your data, but for your work output, for your creativity. So that's the base. The next thing for Web3 is that when you move to a more decentralized kind of system, and somebody doesn't like your freedom of speech, how you're expressing it, what can they do? It's really hard to shut down the internet. Now, some countries have become pretty good at it. And there's reasons. If you ever look at a country that gets this kind of dictatorial type leadership, the first thing they do is shut down freedom of the press, right? That's step one.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about Web3, it's really hard to do. So rather than shut it down, if you want to control the conversation, you're going to have to find another way to appeal to people's interest, or at least appeal to people that you want to build a movement around. Just shutting it down, really, really hard to do. Same thing with money. Right now, if somebody decides they don't like your activities for whatever reason, right or wrong, shut off your money. In a decentralized economy, it's much harder. That poses both an opportunity and a threat because you don't want money moving around in nefarious ways. So, each of these positives has negative corollaries. So having guidelines around how you want to set up your communities is important, which brings us, I think, to the maybe last point I'll make. And that'll be like maybe the way I can describe the foundations of Web3. You have your identity, you have your information, your ability to express it in a decentralized manner. And then in that same context, you now can create, right? And I think that's the biggest promise of this, is that we start with top-down content and everybody being able to consume it. But it then moves to communities of interest, the ability to express yourself, which communities you want to join, kind of neo tribes in a way. And then as you're part of these tribes, how do you want to govern them? It's really the next generation of society in a microcosm. And I think it's extremely exciting to think about both the long term and the immediate applications to just have better communication and more effective business.
Is it hard for most people to imagine what that looks like when you first explain it to them?
Yeah, because I don't first explain it to them. I'm doing it with you because you asked in a more expansive way. The way I would normally, approach this topic is, depending on who you are, well, let's just talk about how this tool not replaces what you have, because it doesn't. How can it become more effective as a business tool? And I think that's why Vatom's done so well in recent times, is because we haven't approached it as a science project or as something interesting to kind of showcase where the future is going. We've approached it as a natural evolution of today's set of tools and capabilities to say, well, if you're really looking to reach people in a more ethical, legal, and compliant manner, and you want to gather that data in a way that delivers more value than you're taking, so you can develop a long-term relationship, let's look at that. There are no companies today that don't want to do that, right? Every company, the companies are not inherently evil. They're actually, most companies, I think, want to do good in the world while doing well for their shareholders. In order to do that, they got sucked into this machine, because how else do you reach people? You reach people by paying the intermediaries that hold those keys. But as that opens up now, you now have an opportunity to reach people in a way that's more aligned with your own values as an organization. That's why it's so exciting.
Yeah, and I think, one thing in your deck you say right in the beginning is you say traditional engagement is dead. And like you said, for most companies for the past 5 or 10 years, how you find new customers? Probably on the internet, probably in these massive Web 2 platforms that have the massive audiences. You've probably done it with ads, probably. And that's probably not working anymore for a variety of reasons. Yeah. Maybe it's the cookie that Apple took out. Maybe it's that people are getting tired of that. In the long run, it's probably not what you want to do anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
And talk to me about how the businesses are starting to realize that.
I think you said it really well just now. in the long run, it's probably not how you wanted to do it anyways.
Yeah.
This is not a problem for these companies. Oh, at first people were freaked out. Apple shut off cookies. What are we going to do? Oh no, now we can't surreptitiously gather data against people's wills and use it for nefarious purposes. Oh no. But then within seconds you're like, well, okay. It maybe disrupts the way we're doing business, but thank you. Yeah. It needed disrupting. So what if we were able to move from interrupting people to being welcomed? What if we could move from an annoyance-based mode of communicating to a value-based one? What if we could actually connect to people where they said, thank you? What else can you do for me or I can do for you? The essence of a relationship, any relationship, is being able to feel like you're giving more than you're receiving on both sides. And feel like that's giving you purpose, that there's a reason to spend your time on it and it's nourishing you. I think this idea of just kind of showering people with messages based on stuff that they know wasn't really gathered for them appropriately about them is creepy to people. You don't want that. But it's very different to give people what they do want. I've never heard of a bride go to her guest and say, you bastard, you violated my privacy, looked at my wedding registry, reviewed the things I asked for, went out of your way to get me something, and then bought it for me. I feel violated. It's never happened. Because this is a thank you relationship, right? This is what we call zero-party data. First-party data is what you glean in an ethical way for maybe an initial value exchange. Zero-party data is what you earn over time when someone says, hey, this is a really great relationship. Thank you. You know, I'm going on vacation over here in Florida this day. You know, I just want to let you know if you got anything interesting for me. You know, you start to say, I like basketball. I'm this. I have 3 people in my home. You start to tell about yourself, not permanently, but for the time that aspect of your identity you wish to share with this group because you're feeling comfortable with them. And they're earning it every day. Advertising doesn't earn you the right to communicate with someone every day. But the next generation of advertising will. It's advertising, marketing, and loyalty collapsed into one.
Right. Yeah, it's important to look at that whole relationship that an individual has with a business. I mean, ultimately, like you said, these companies are there to provide value for you, to deliver wow, as the Zappos founder used to say, Tony Hsieh, right? And that's why we love our brands.
Yeah.
Except, unfortunately, the current way, I guess it used to be television and advertising and radio advertising, where you hit a bunch of people, most of which probably didn't want to see or hear that ad. Now you try to target them and get them to opt in and go something and do somewhere. What you want to get to is this zero-party situation where the customer is so happy to tell you what they want because they know that you can potentially give it to them.
Yeah.
And that's where we were probably always headed anyways.
I think it is. And where this gets really interesting, but also even more challenging, is it's not just about giving customers what they want. Yeah, that's helpful and that's a start, but you can't just keep showering people with stuff. You need a business. It's meeting them where they are and where they want to be and enhancing their lives. That's the notion of community, right? What we spoke about before, one of the core tenets, once you have an identity, once you have the ability to have these various powerful mechanisms, you now can create these digital communities that are not representative of accident of birth, of where you happen to be geographically, but by your interests, by your goals, your passions, your ability to affect that community, therefore, is now both what will keep you coming back, but also dangerous. Because as a brand, as soon as you open up, we've learned this in the Web 2 days of UGC, user-generated content, as soon as you open up any kind of community to free speech, you get objectionably free speech. So how do you moderate? So the greatest challenge and opportunity of the next generation of these communities will be moderation. I'm not coming here and saying, oh, let's just let everyone do whatever they want. It's like, let's have anarchy. That's not, governments exist for a reason. regulations exist for a reason. We actually want more regulations in certain areas, like AI over time, right? To give guardrails to our worst selves and bad actors. We need that same understanding here. Now, the technologies are getting better to apply to these, but these are unmet challenges that are very important.
Yeah. I think now would be a great way to go to an example, because it's one thing to hear about all the theory, but you did this recently, and I think I'd love to talk about the Frito-Lay example with Pepsi, because this was, like you said, it's a consumer of a brand who traditionally would buy a bag of potato chips and eat them, and that was it.
Right.
And you found a way, and I know you won awards for this as well, to engage these customers in an incredible way, to get zero-party data, and to do it for a fraction of the cost of this traditional Web 2. Maybe you can talk a little bit about it, and I think we got a video for like 90 seconds.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a great example to show people, because when I saw that video played by Colin, who's, I think you're head of experience, I was like, wow. I heard everyone talk about the metaverse. I had been to the sandbox of the Decentralands, but there was nothing going on there, and I couldn't really feel like it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But when I saw the way that you literally delivered wow for a bunch of people that weren't expecting it, got them to create content, generate a community to where they were just like, this is just amazing. I was blown away. So maybe you can talk a little bit about it, and we can play the video.
Sure. I mean, credit where credit is due. It's a very collaborative effort, built on the Vatom platform. And by the way, I think one of the things we're proudest of at Vatom is that some of the best work wasn't done by us. It was done in collaboration with people using the platform. Sure, by us in collaboration, but it's an opportunity, a new canvas for human imagination to come forward and say, well, now how are we going to reach people in a new way? And this is a good example. Some of the best marketers and thinking in the world comes out of PepsiCo and Frito-Lay. And I think they were looking for a way to connect to people in a way that would not only be memorable now, but maybe forever. Maybe create a moment that actually lasts, right? And you can do that with blockchain, because blockchain is not owned by PepsiCo or Vatom or anybody else. It exists independently of us. It's that independent observer that will last throughout the ages, or at least the psychology of that, right? Gives you that feeling of realness, like a physical object, a virtual atom, right? So now apply that here. First thing, and most important with this particular opportunity, was you have to reach people with an expectation of zero complexity, zero friction. So you may love potato chips, but you may not be a crypto fanatic. You may not be interested in spending time learning about all sorts of things in order to experience something. So let's assume you're not, right? Thank you, pandemic. We don't say that very often. Thank you, pandemic, for this, of teaching everyone to scan a QR code, get a menu. So at least we know that that's pretty prevalent, right? In this case, that's all it took. Look at a bag of Lay's potato chips or Doritos or any one of these savory snacks. Take a picture, not a picture, scan. Opens up, no download, no complexity, and there you are. You now have an identity. You now have a wallet, but it's yours, right? It doesn't start with ours. It's your thing. So this is the first kind of historic moment. It didn't go to say, download the PepsiCo app, download the Lay's app, your 97th, what you used to. It just said, here's your wallet, right? Then it said, would you like to engage in this in an ethical and legal way and give the most simple first-party data, which is your phone number or email, whatever, just so you can get back into your own wallet, right? Okay, you're in. Now you have an opportunity to engage in a really interesting way. So what it said was, pick your favorite team and take a selfie. That selfie then gets minted on a golden hexagon in 3D. So now you see yourself on this hexagon, which is interesting. What does a hexagon represent? Well, this was for FIFA World Cup Qatar, right? So the soccer ball, as you say in the UK, the football. So now you have this football where these hexagons make up the ball. And now you can imagine yourself as one of those pieces on this ball. So that's interesting. So now I'm a piece, but disconnected from everybody else on the planet. And it says, pass the ball. Well, what does it take to pass a ball in this context? Well, you just send it to a friend. Put in their phone number or email, right? The virality is unbelievable, because what happens is you send it to a friend. they don't get a message from us or from Lay's. They get a message from you. Hey, Joe just offered you, to play this game. Do you want to? Click. And now they go. By doing that, by engaging in that gamified mechanic, you now become part of this ball, right? So now your golden hexagon becomes part of hundreds of thousands of other people's golden hexagons coming together on this massive planet-sized football, hovering in the sky, where now you're part of this communal art project, perhaps one of the largest, if not the largest communal art project ever done on the planet. You're now part of this with other celebrities like yourself. Your next door neighbor could be Beckham, could be Messi, could be your favorite football player, could be actors and actresses. A lot of people just on themselves were holding up their bags, great, participate, help the brand spread the love, right? A lot of people made funny faces, a lot of people just smiled, right? But you're there. And now you're part of this thing, which at the end of the day gets fixed. Doesn't go on forever, gets fixed. Now you've participated in whatever period it was and gets dropped into everyone's wallets who opted in to participate. Dropped and minted on a blockchain for history. So rather than say, I played a little game and whatever, you now have a permanent artifact with you emblazoned on this beautiful object, this digital permanence that will go down in history. You could pass it down through generations, give it to your grandkids, right? And they'll see you on this ball because you can also search and find you on the ball. It's a really emotionally impactful moment. And the stats were off the roof. I mean, more people signed up for this than Frito-Lay had Twitter followers in 13 years, right? And when you think about the stats that we got versus expect, now we knew it would be interesting, like otherwise we wouldn't have done it, but we didn't know it would be this interesting. You would expect, I think, like how many people who scan a QR code on a bag of chips would actually want to participate and take a selfie and send it to a friend. What percentage of people who scanned? It was like, I would think like 1% to 3%, like a third did. And how many people would share with someone else? Like 40%. How many people come back every day? Like 70+% every day to play a little game, to see how the ball's growing. When you start to think about the engagement metrics, and maybe you're paying a little bit, to get that initial campaign out the door and to promote it, but you're not paying anything for people to share with their friends, and the enjoyment that they get out of it, it's pure value for them and for the various participants that brought this amazing project together. So it was an honor to be part of this, but I also think it was an interesting pioneering experiment to see if we can now converge all these elements, the Web3 wallet, the ease of use for the next generation of that to be zero friction, the digital object that are programmable, the Vatom kind of objects that are not just, they don't just sit there, they do something, they can react. And we can talk a little about what they can do outside of this example. They're amazing. They could do anything. They could pop out and float in augmented reality and go look for pizza. Like they're programmable, right? Coming together in that situation. And then you start to recognize, why are you doing this at all as a marketer or as a business? It's not as an experiment anymore. It's not to just try it. It's because you're delivering better business outcomes, better metrics than you would in previous generations of these type of not only technologies, but methods of communication.
I'm going to play the video, and then I got a bunch of questions for you.
Sure.
So we'll roll the Frito-Lay Pepsi video right now.
PepsiCo partnered with Vatom for the 2022 FIFA World Cup to bring an experience like never before. It was the largest thing that was ever done in Web3, with over 200+ million bags of chips printed with QR codes. What came next was they chose their favorite team, they registered, and more than 40% of the people that arrived played all of the game. They took a photo of themselves. That photo got turned into a 3D hexagon golden coin, which was a gift. It was an NFT. Those photos got added to a giant UGC soccer ball. Once fans were added to that ball, they had the opportunity to see other fans, who they were cheering for. They took photos of themselves with bags of chips, they were able to see celebrities, and hundreds of thousands of people were united around their love for soccer in what is one of the largest UGC experiences to date. Fans also had the opportunity to play additional games to get more entries into the sweeps. There were additional weekly prizes that were given away. Game mechanics that were employed drove fans to come back on a regular basis to be able to participate, to earn more entries and potentially win more prizes. 70% of the people that participated came back regularly, and almost 40% of those people shared it with their friends, leveraging that power of a local network. Fans were able to collect objects in AR, they used scratch cards to gain additional entries, answered trivia questions, and more. The games were simple, but highly engaging. In just 60 days of the Pass the Ball challenge, PepsiCo earned more directly addressable users than they had earned Twitter followers in the previous 13 years. Their conversion rates were 10 times greater than what social ads or email ads had generated previously. One of the real value proposition points of Vatom is the reduced cost in customer acquisition cost. PepsiCo saw $1.50 per customer, where the industry average is $22. Not only was the campaign a huge success because of how engaging it was, how much people enjoyed it, and the value that they got out of it, but PepsiCo now has a direct relationship with almost 400,000 people. And they've established a true relationship of value with their customers that's aimed at a lifetime, not just a campaign.
So we just took a look at the video of everything that encapsulated. Post-promotion, me as a user, now I've got my own wallet that no one controls. I own that digital asset for a long time. And then the company, what do they have now and what can they do with that?
That's a very insightful question, because as excited as one might be by the metrics that you get from engagement.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.